Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about emotional wellness. And this is honestly a subject I can talk about all day because I'm a therapist, but I'm going to condense it in this video to some key points I want to tie it into with emotional wellness. So this is not a step-by-step, you can do this, you can do that. It's just a lot of things to consider and some knowledge about emotions that could increase your emotional well-being. Okay, so first thing is that we have to take the time to explore our emotional blueprint. This is where you first learned about emotions. This is if you had a safe space to express your emotions growing up. This is, you have language to go with your emotions. Can you communicate to someone how you're feeling in a moment? This is if you have been taught to avoid your emotions, suppress your emotions, eat your emotions away, drink your emotions away. What were you taught about emotions? How were you first introduced to emotions? How do you deal with your emotions now? So in this emotional blueprint, we usually will see some traces of your childhood and your young adulthood because your caretakers or your guardians are the first kind of models of how to have emotional wellness. They're kind of your first model of, hey, there's this thing, these feelings or these emotions, and this is what we do with them. You have emotions or feelings with them, this is how we're going to respond to them. You have emotions and you have feelings, this is how you should handle them. So take some time to kind of explore what were some of the things that I was taught about emotions, and how is that still showing up in my life, in my relationships, in my friendships, and in my career today. Okay, so the second thing is just talking through some information about emotions, because if you kind of have an attitude regarding emotions that they are scary and they make me feel vulnerable, and to express my emotions mean that I'm weak, it can be helpful to have some additional information. So one thought is that emotions are messages. So for example, when an emotion comes up, that emotion is carrying with it an indicator of something. For example, if every time I go to the store on Thursday, I experience intense sadness, then that sadness is trying to tell me something. That may mean I have a thought every time I go to the store that oh, I remember going to the store with my grandmother, but we have so many thoughts, I don't have really time to process that I'm really grieving right now. Or an emotion of anger may come up, and anger is a secondary emotion, but if I'm exploring that a little bit more, I find that something that my coworkers said made me angry, it made me frustrated, it made me disappointed, and that's why that emotion came up and that anger kind of rose up in me, right? So they carry with them emotions, but oftentimes our life is moving at such a fast pace that we don't take the time that we need to acknowledge and identify the emotion and process the emotion. So when we're talking about emotional well-being, those are some things that we really have to do, is kind of slowing down. Okay, what is causing me to experience this emotion? Let me explore this emotion. How do I feel this emotion? What do I notice about this emotion? And that can be, when does this emotion come around? How does it feel? How do I know that it's that emotion? Just taking time to explore it. Okay, another thing is that when we talk about emotions, usually we've been taught that these are good emotions, these are bad emotions. But I want to challenge you to shift that to maybe happiness is an emotion that's good to feel, right? But that anger or sadness is not necessarily a bad emotion, it's just an uncomfortable one. It's just a much more difficult emotion to experience. When we label emotions as good and bad, when it comes to processing it, we've been taught to stay away from bad things. So don't process that anger, don't process that sadness, because those are bad emotions and you should be afraid of them. So don't touch them. You don't know what's going to happen if you start processing and tapping into and exploring those emotions. So we want to shift that. Even though they may make us feel uncomfortable, we should not label them as bad, because they do have a message they're trying to deliver. Another way to look at your emotions is that some emotions we can term as natural. So these are, you feel happy naturally, and then it kind of fades away a little bit. You feel sad, but it kind of fades away. It's just like this, kind of like, oh, okay, I feel this. Blah, blah, blah. Then we have manufactured emotions. These are intense emotions that come as a result of experience, as from a trauma, just for something that you went through that are intense and they seem to linger. Okay, these are much harder to cope with, because usually something within the experience or something within the trauma changes the way that you see yourself, others, or the world around you. And those are three things that we deal with on a daily basis: ourselves, other people, for most people, and the world around us. So those manufactured feelings or emotions are less likely to just go away. And I would even say that those manufactured feelings, you know, a therapist can help you kind of process those, because they don't just naturally go away or subside. Okay. All right. The next thing that I want to talk about here is kind of some ways where you can start moving to a space of emotional wellness, because I know I have to wrap up. But some ways you can start moving towards emotional wellness is stillness and meditation and mindfulness. And I know those are three different things, but I want to pull that the common thread is slowing down and exploring your feelings and emotions non-judgmentally. Oftentimes, and I know we have busy lives, but oftentimes we don't even really know what's going on with us on the inside. We're just moving from one thing to another, but just taking 5 to 10 minutes just to slow down, to check in with yourself. Another reason why this slowing down is important is because sometimes we use busyness as a way to avoid emotions. And also sometimes our body captures and is holding on to that emotion before we get a chance to even process and rationalize why we're having the emotion. So for example, if I'm taking a moment just to relax and just to sit in stillness and be present with myself, and I notice that my teeth are clenching, and I'm like, wow, I notice that my teeth are clenching. When I get out of that moment of stillness, I can rationalize and say, you know what? My teeth clench when I'm anxious. And so I can start, in that moment I was just exploring, but after that exploration, I can say, well, let me go back through my day. What kind of made me anxious? What was I doing? What happened during my day? And so that way I'm learning more about myself. I'm learning that, okay, my body was responding to this experience even before I had a chance to kind of rationalize and think through it. So it helps me better understand myself, right? So another thing that you can practice is gratitude, right? When we think about emotions, sometimes we have this way of looking at them like threats. I don't have time for my emotions. I'm not gonna process them. I got too much going on. But one way you can look at it is, wow, my emotions really kind of validate that I'm human. Wow, thank you emotions for making me aware that this made me very uncomfortable. Like that anger came up in me because I felt violated. That anger showed up because I felt like someone walked over my boundaries. Thank you, emotions, for coming to give me that message, right? Because emotions are something that we can't necessarily turn off. Even if we choose to avoid them or ignore them, they are still gonna be happening, right? And I feel like so many people have their emotions kind of like backlog. So when they look at processing emotions, it feels overwhelming because it's so much stuff to process. So I want to wrap up by saying that therapy is definitely a good way to start exploring your emotions and learning how to manage your emotions, learning how to cope in it and practice emotional regulation. So definitely, if you feel like this is something that you need help with, don't be afraid to reach out for help. Especially if you have had those experiences that elicit strong emotions, and that you absolutely need help with processing, or someone to just help you navigate through how to process. So I hope this was helpful. Y'all have a great night. Bye.